Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of This Month in Travel, the August edition. It's been a while since I've been on the show, but we're all got the gang back together. So, with us, as usual, the man so nice I named him twice, Mr. Chris Christensen. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, other than this cold.
You just got back from Europe?
I just got back. Yeah, I was in Europe for TBEX in Stockholm, and then I went on a Viking Ocean cruise in Sweden, Finland, Russia, Estonia, Poland, Germany, Denmark, and Norway.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
And how was TBEX?
TBEX was good. Stockholm is lovely.
You have finally pulled ahead of me.
I have. I now have the record for the most TBEX attended as far as we know.
I'm pretty sure that we know. The lady you also hear in the background, Jen Leo. How are you doing, Jen?
Hey, everybody. Miss you guys.
It's been a long time since I've done this. I've been gone for 2 months.
In Central Asia and where else?
I was in Alaska for about 3 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Visiting national parks. I visited 6 of the 8 national parks in Alaska. Took a lot of photos. Then headed to Central Asia on a G Adventures trip. Went to Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan.
Excellent.
So, got that.
Can't wait to see the photos from those, Gary. I'm sure they're already up somewhere.
No, I'm just finishing up Kazakhstan right now, and then I got a ton from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan to work with. But our guest this week, actually we can probably start doing weekly ones again, traveled around the world for 18 months using only Bitcoin. And I'm kind of curious to see how he did it. Please welcome Felix Weis.
Thank you very much.
Coming to us from Berlin, correct?
Yeah, right now I'm in Berlin. I grew up in Luxembourg, a small country in Europe.
Beautiful country in Europe.
Yeah, you've been there?
I have. Luxembourg City is, I think, the prettiest capital city in Europe.
Oh, really? Oh, that's very nice to say. I have seen other ones, which I have to say are nicer though. I don't know, Prague probably, if you've seen.
Prague is pretty also. I will give you that.
Yeah.
Okay, I am part Luxembourger.
You are?
Yes, my mother's family has ancestors from Luxembourg. And I have different ancestors from both Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands. So my brother and I are the only Benelux Americans that I know of.
Our neighbors across the street have Luxembourg heritage, and they are trying to get back there. I think the deadline must be this year or next year in order for their family and their kids to get free college. I don't know what kind of deal that is, but they are working on that.
Very nice.
Nice. I think education looks pretty okay.
Before we get talking to Felix about his very interesting trip, let's go through a couple of news items this week. This one came from Bored Panda, and I'm kind of curious as to how real this is, or what's actually going to end up happening. But it is basically a device that goes in your ear. Actually, it's 2 earpieces, I guess, that will provide in your ear real-time translation in French, Spanish, Italian, and English. And supposedly it hits the shelves in September, and it will cost $129. And I am assuming that most of the translation would probably take place in the cloud, because I just don't know if they would have the processor power to do this. But do you think this is legit, that something like this would really work?
I can't wait to try it.
If it's doing it in the cloud and if it's tied to your smartphone and with the limitations of automatic translation, I mean, we're already seeing some of that technology happen on smartphones. We have a lot of people who stay with us for Airbnb who are from China, for instance, and we pull out smartphones and start talking at them and doing real-time translations. So it's a babblefish. It's right out of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Gary, what you need?
I've been using Google Translate a lot on my trip. I learned Spanish too a little bit now, but like when I was in Hong Kong, I didn't speak any Chinese, obviously, or in Turkey. So Google Translate was really doing a great job, and like I just speak into my phone, and it was translating and then speaking it with the voice, because also it's the pronunciation which you can't always obviously get right, even if you have like text-to-text translation. But that was pretty well done from Google Translate, and I think right now they are the furthest developed product in the world right now, and I would be very surprised if another company would come out of the blue and do a better job, because it's really, really hard to do a good translation, especially if you combine all these three features like input voice and output voice, and then the translation of the voice itself. I think that's very hard.
Output voice is pretty well established. I mean, when they introduced the Macintosh, it spoke for itself. So I mean, that one I think is
English, but then you have so many other languages, and they are all very, very different. And that's actually what you want.
Well, but they're also not doing this in all languages. They're doing it in French, Spanish, Italian, and English, and those are languages we have done output voice in a long time, decades. So the translation is the hardest thing, and in speaker-independent translation is harder. But I mean, we're seeing the technology get there.
Yeah. Have you guys used Google Translate on the phone?
Yeah. I usually don't travel with a data plan, so I can't use it that much when I'm traveling.
You can, at least not for like voice recognition, but you can use you can download like a dictionary into Google Translate when you're on Wi-Fi, and then use it without a data plan.
Oh, I haven't tried that. Good to know.
Chris, what mobile service do you use?
AT&T still.
I was going to say they just came out with a report ranking all of the mobile networks in the U.S., and T-Mobile came out in top for 4 of the 6 different things they measured. The only thing they didn't was latency, which Sprint won, and Verizon won on availability. AT&T got skunked on everything.
I still haven't heard good things about T-Mobile in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is why, and I've got 4 people on my plan, all with different dates, so it's a little harder to switch.
If you get the an iPhone 6s or newer, well, I guess there's nothing newer yet, but that uses the T-Mobile new frequency. It uses the 700 megahertz frequency, which is what Verizon uses. Uh-huh. So when you see the T-Mobile maps that have them like covering the whole U.S., it's using this new frequency, and it really improves the availability of the signal. So it's a whole different experience than using the older stuff.
Interesting.
Anyways, and they also offered free LTE speeds in Europe all summer, which was kind of nice.
Another very interesting product by Google, maybe for you guys, if you haven't heard about it, Google Fi, and that's basically an international data plan by Google, and you pay like $10 US per gigabyte, and it works in 135 countries. So you don't need to switch SIM card or anything like that, and you just pay $10 per gigabyte.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the only catch is you have to have a Nexus phone, though.
Oh, do you?
Nexus phone.
That's a pretty big catch.
Yeah.
I've actually considered getting one, and I guess they're going to be announcing a brand new one soon. They tend to be a little bit cheaper than other Android devices, but.
Oh yeah, I love Nexus phones. They're like stock Android, and like don't have like, because the Samsung version of Android is usually comes with some nice features, but then usually they suck more than the original version. So I prefer the stock Android.
This story I thought was kind of interesting. So there was a pilot in Dusseldorf who had a flight that was 2 hours behind, and it was on the Eurowings airline. And what he did is he had 70 passengers waiting to get on the flight that was delayed. He just took off without the passengers because he didn't want to be late, not thinking that maybe delivering the passengers is the entire point of having the plane. But the passengers then, they said, kind of rioted in the airport.
That's funny.
Well, I think
that
part of the
happen?
problem there is there are penalties against having late flights and things like that, and you get what you measure. And apparently they don't have any penalties against customer satisfaction debacles other than riots.
But I'm kind of wondering what happened to the pilot.
I haven't seen a follow-up story. It's a good question.
I mean, you would think that, yes, technically that's what the rule is regarding late flights, but, come on. Leaving the passengers just kind of defeats the whole point. Not to mention the cost that goes into flying an empty airplane for no particular reason, because I'm sure they'd have to do something with the passengers to end up getting them at the airport.
Well, and the passengers had already been waiting 2 hours for the delayed flight. It's not like the passengers weren't there on time or something like that. So it was pretty bad.
This is an older story, but we didn't really get to it. The World Airport Awards came out. Jen, what are your favorite airports in North America? American airports or Canadian?
Not Mexican.
And you're also on mute, so nobody can hear you.
You know what? This is going to surprise you, but the last time I was at Sacramento Airport, I was really impressed. I also like the Denver Airport.
They ranked Denver at number 2, which I find surprising.
I like Denver also, except for the fact that it's located in Nebraska. Very conveniently located to the Denver metropolitan area. It's way the heck out there. But
I just
it's
really
a nice
like.
airport.
I like the restaurant and beer options, and it's very clean. And but Sacramento also had some good restaurant options, and I was like Sacramento. But then I thought, oh, okay, the state capital, so they need to have good airport amenities.
They put JFK at number 9, which to me invalidates the entire
I had the same reaction.
Oh, I love the San Francisco International Airport. Excellent.
My favorite is actually in the U.S. is Minneapolis. I think it actually has one of the best airports. The dining and shopping options and everything are great. Not on the list.
Minneapolis is nice. I do like San Francisco, except what they don't rate for is it has one of the worst on-time departure things because of weather. So I mean, I like San Francisco, but I get to enjoy some of those restaurants more than I would like with delayed flights or flights coming in. Quite often, when I was flying from Boston very regularly, I would say half the time we were delayed coming into San Francisco because of weather.
I think Chris, I've nearly missed a flight because I was enjoying Cat Cora's kitchen so much.
Well, and they have Vancouver at the top, and I would say that is a great airport. I would
agree with
a reasonable choice. Yeah.
I would say that's the best airport in North America, and I've actually gotten my hair cut there a couple times.
Now, was that because something was delayed, or?
No, I had a layover, and you can they have a barber there. So I just used that opportunity to go and get my hair cut between flights.
Now, one of the things that I think that's tough when you start talking about airports is that depending on which airline you're flying, you might be in a different terminal, and you can have a very, very different experience. So I know Johnny Jett says, for instance, that LAX is his favorite airport. Well, he always is driving to the airport and flying out on international, and the international terminal is wonderful. But if you try and get from the international terminal to another flight, it's ridiculous. You have to walk outside and walk down the block and all the traffic. And I really hate LAX because I'm always transferring there. And as a transferring airport, it's crap. It's a terrible airport. And the international terminal is the only terminal I've seen there that I like. And I know Kim Mance was saying that she really hated Boston, worst airport in the U.S. It's like, well, if you fly on United, actually, it's a great terminal these days. If you fly on JetBlue, it's not as nice a terminal. And if you fly on Virgin America, it's 2 small gates with a place that'll sell you donuts. I mean, it's really bad. So it depends a lot on what your airlines are, which terminal you're going into. One of the reasons I think that San Francisco is nice is I don't think San Francisco has a bad terminal. I think that Terminal 1 is not quite as nice as some of the other ones that have been redone recently, but there's not a bad terminal there.
Yeah, I think the new JetBlue terminal at JFK is actually not bad. think it's
Yep.
Terminal 5. Rest of it I can really do without. Let's do one more story here. This I thought was interesting. In Australia, they want to institute something called a backpacker tax. So basically, a lot of backpackers or travelers come to Australia and they can work while they're there, and it's actually an enormous part of the farm labor force in Australia. And I've actually met a bunch of people doing this. I was in Mildura, which is in New South Wales, I think, the southwest corner of it, and I stayed at a place, and everybody was there working, basically picking fruit and things like that. And what they want to do is charge basically a 32.5% tax on all the money these people make. And there's been a huge outcry from people in rural areas basically saying that this would dry up their labor supply, that if you take away basically a third of the money people make, and they're not making a ton to begin with, they would no longer get people that would come there to work on these farms.
Well, and the thing that you skipped there was 85% of the agricultural workforce in the Northern Territory, they said, is coming from working travelers. I'm really surprised. I've run into, I mean, it is an easier place to get a visa to do work. So, but I've run into that not on the farms, but in like the restaurants in Sydney Harbor, where the people who were waiting on me were travelers. So I didn't realize it was something that extended past the tourism industry. This was news to me and interesting.
Well, you know, Australia doesn't have a border. They don't have any other. They don't have like a Mexico, where if they want labor to come in, or in Europe, you know, you have maybe Eastern Europeans that travel to Western Europe. They don't have that, and not to mention they're just far away from everybody. So this was kind of a solution they had to bring in that labor, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see if this actually passes, because it would really cause a lot of havoc to certain industries in Australia.
Well, and I'm sure that the person who proposed this, a 32% tax rate probably in Australia is a very reasonable rate. It's probably what everybody else is paying, or close to it. You know, in a lot of countries, in fact, 32% is not bad at all. For us, that sounds really high, but you know, we're not used to the same system of taxation that a lot of countries do.
All right, well, let's get to the subject at hand. Felix, you spent 18 months traveling around the world, which is a great accomplishment. Many people have done it, but you did it only using Bitcoin. And so what was the decision you had to do this trip? Why did you do it?
That's actually a question I asked myself during this trip also quite often.
Got turned down by a lot of credit cards recently, or?
No. So my background, I'm a computer programmer, and I was always very interested in computer science and the history of money. And then in 2012, I think, I discovered Bitcoin, and it struck to me quite fast that this would possibly be one day maybe a world currency. And that's what I wanted to basically find out, if it's already there, because at the time, this is like back in end of 2014 when I made the final decision to do this. Most of the stories you heard in the news were like, Bitcoin is dead, Bitcoin is a failed experiment, and the price has been going down, which a lot of people, in my opinion, wrongly use as an indicator for the health of Bitcoin. And so yeah, everybody was telling me basically Bitcoin doesn't exist anymore. And I use it in Berlin like at least once a week here, because we have a lot of restaurants here that accept Bitcoin, or you can buy groceries or sleep in a hostel, pay with Bitcoin. A lot of stuff you can pay in Bitcoin here. And I knew there was like Expedia taking Bitcoin for hotels, and you could book flights on cheapair.com also with Bitcoin. So I thought, yeah, they are basically all the ingredients are together to like at least try and do this trip only with Bitcoin. So I sat down, and then I took my savings, which I had done anyway since I was 21, because I wanted to do like a 1 year world trip besides Bitcoin. And then I took these savings and bought Bitcoin with them, and then canceled basically my credit card and my bank account, and haven't been using any of these, I call them classical financial services since, and been traveling using that. Maybe you can imagine like this money in the cloud. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with Bitcoin,
Sure.
but basically I use it like as this money in the cloud, which in every country when I came to, I needed obviously to find people who were using Bitcoin, who wanted to buy or trade Bitcoin with me, so I could get some local cash, because obviously you can't pay everything with Bitcoin. But my question was basically, is it possible to do this trip using Bitcoin as the base currency, and not relying on credit cards or banks or anything like that? That was my initial motivation.
What was the hardest part? How did you do like the daily, getting a lunch from a street vendor, for instance?
Yeah, so there's a lot of websites that are helping you out. One of the most useful websites for me during this trip was coinmap.org, and it's basically like Google Maps for Bitcoin businesses. So everybody who has a restaurant or I don't know, paragliding flights offers, anybody who basically wants to sell these services also in Bitcoin can basically put an ad there for free, and so people who want to buy something with Bitcoin can find these people then. So it's basically like a business directory for, and it's organized like a map, so you can use it pretty easily and find the next place which takes Bitcoin. Obviously, not everybody is quite there yet, and I think right now there are about 8,000 businesses listed on that site, which is up from about 4,000 when I started this trip. So in this 18 months, more than 4,000 businesses came onto that site too. But yeah, obviously not everybody is there. And if they're not there, so one thing I obviously tried first is like, I asked them like, have you heard about Bitcoin? Would you be interested in trying it out and like letting me pay with it here? And in the beginning, people were obviously very skeptical. But once there were a few news stories about this trip, and I could show them like, oh, this guy is actually serious, he's not trying to scam us or something like that, then they were more open to the idea of accepting Bitcoin.
Felix, most of our audience is audio, even though we're doing this on Google Hangout. So can you tell them the URL for your blog, please?
Yes. So the blog is the easiest way to find it is basically just type in Google and go Bitcoin Traveler. Then you find it.
And we'll put that in the link for that in the show notes too. And just so people know, if you go to the lyrics of an episode, it always has all the links that we talk about in the show.
So on Felix's blog, Bitcoin Traveler, there is a big yellow Bitcoin ATM. Where is this picture taken? I mean, is this your apartment? Tell me about it.
This is actually the first destination where I went to. So when I started from Berlin, because at the beginning I didn't know, was it actually possible? I had no clue at all. And so I just had 200 euros in cash, and that was it. And all the rest was basically in Bitcoin, digital form. So I had enough money to cover for everything, like theoretically, if people would accept Bitcoin, but that's the problem, right? What do you do to find people who don't accept it? So the first destination I went to was actually Prague, because there's also a couple of Bitcoin startups there who are making Bitcoin hardware wallets that are basically little devices where you can securely store your Bitcoins, because obviously way too many Bitcoins have been stolen in the past or hacked. And if you use Bitcoin correctly, then it's the most secure store of money in the world. It's more secure than any bank vault, because it uses mathematics to encrypt basically these access tokens. But yeah, it's hard for people who are not very technical. So that's why these hardware wallets make it very easy for the average person to secure large amounts of Bitcoin. So that's why I went to first because I had now all my money in Bitcoin. I wanted to make sure it wouldn't get stolen quite right away. So I went to Prague to buy one of these Bitcoin hardware wallets. And this picture you are referring to is actually in a cafe in Prague. And the interesting part about that cafe is this cafe doesn't accept fiat money anymore. So you can't pay with Czech crowns there. You can't pay with any currency, with any paper money. You can't pay with credit cards. You can't pay with anything. So the only way you are able to pay for your coffee is with Bitcoin. So when they come there and they don't have Bitcoin, there's this ATM in the entrance door, so people can then use basically their cash, put it into the machine, get their first Bitcoin, very easy process, and then pay the coffee with that. So it's basically a way to show people how does it work, because Bitcoin is hard to understand, but like once you use it one time, it makes so much more sense. So
would I be crazy to guess that the coffee shop is like in the downstairs of some company that is involved in the Bitcoin business?
Yeah, obviously. It's downstairs of a co-working space where a lot of these companies work also, and the cafe.
And I'm guessing that coinmap.org is also located in Prague, because when I brought it up, it defaulted the map to Prague.
Yeah, the company that makes this CoinMap website is actually also Satoshi, not Satoshi, sorry, Satoshi Labs, exactly. Satoshi Labs has two products, with one is the Bitcoin Trezor and the other one is CoinMap. Both very useful, at least for me, doing this traveling.
Felix, what countries, tell us the easiest countries to travel through for Bitcoin and the hardest countries to travel through.
Well, you live in the most easiest country, and that's actually the United States, because technologically they are very advanced, and you have a lot of businesses. If you go to San Francisco, where I was, or New York City, you can find a lot of businesses accepting Bitcoin already. And since San Francisco is very tech-driven, a lot of people know and use Bitcoin also on a daily basis, so it wasn't very hard there.
Well, I just looked at the coin map for San Jose, Silicon Valley, and saw 7 businesses in the whole area. That's not a lot. There's there's 900,000 people here and only 7 businesses that at least have added to that map.
So in San Francisco Center, I think, or in the whole area, there were about 200 last time I checked.
In the whole Bay Area?
Yeah. Which is a lot higher in that area than in any other. Like I think one of the highest density is actually Arnhem in the Netherlands. There's a very it's a big city, but like the ratio of Bitcoin businesses to population is the highest in the world, I think, there.
Bitcoin is something I've looked at in the past. I've read a lot about it, but I've never actually done anything with it. Mm-hmm. So if somebody wanted to start playing around with Bitcoin, how would they go about doing it? What software do you get? How do you go about buying Bitcoins?
So there's a lot of ways to get Bitcoin. I usually recommend people to not buy Bitcoin. First of all, because I think it is much more interesting to and helps the economy of Bitcoin more. Whatever you do, if you sell tomatoes, then just sell these tomatoes also for Bitcoin and wait for somebody to come over and buy your tomatoes in Bitcoin. Because now the currency is not only, you have now this currency too, but it's also more valuable because it's more accepted. Currencies are always like, a lot of like, the usefulness comes from the acceptance, basically. So why is the dollar so useful? Because it is accepted in a lot of places. And you have other currencies in the world which are not very useful because they have a very low value because nobody really wants them. My biggest shock I had probably was when so maybe not a lot of people don't know that, but I think that's one of the very important things about Bitcoin to know is Bitcoin is limited to 21 million Bitcoins. The number itself doesn't really matter, and now people say, oh, 21 million Bitcoins, that's not even one Bitcoin for every person in the world. Yeah, of course, you can divide these. If you think about currency, you usually think like physical currency, and then you have like obviously the physical smallest unit, which is the penny. But since this is digital, it is basically divisible until any amount you want. So that's not a problem, right? Imagine a Bitcoin more big like a gallon of water, and you can send somebody like a drop or a glass or half a gallon. it's really very liquid. Like it's not like a Bitcoin, like that's the smallest unit. You can divide it as and recombine as you want. Like so that's not the problem. But like the factor that it is limited makes a political inflation of the currency, like in the sense of like the central banks create more and more money to solve problems which they created by creating too much money. happening right now live in Venezuela. I've been there and I saw it with my own eyes because I read so much about inflation and hyperinflation in history books and saw pictures and stuff like that, but I've never seen it really with my own eyes. So that when I was in Venezuela visiting some Bitcoin folks there who are actually using Bitcoin because they use it as a hedge against the inflation. Because that it's way more. Yeah, we all know Bitcoin is not very stable. It goes up and down a lot, but like it's much more stable if you compare to their local currency, which in the past 3 years had I think over 1,000x loss in the value.
Well, yes, but if they put their money in, even if they put their money in British pounds, which have taken a beating recently, it would be more stable than Bitcoin. And that's really the problem I have with Bitcoin. I think the technology is awesome. I think the blockchain technology that it's built on has some other interesting things. We're seeing blockchain being used, for instance, for people doing poor man's copyrights and, register a document that I created this on a particular day so that later on, if I'm running into a problem, all of those things are really cool. But Bitcoin as a currency, one of the things I want from my currencies is I want stability. And I felt this even when Bitcoin was rising in value, that it's a bad currency if it's not stable. Because when it was rising in value, it was rising in value because it was a bubble. I mean, it was speculation, and I don't look for that in a currency. I don't want my currency to I'm not trying to do speculation when I'm just trying to put things into a currency. And that's really the trouble I have with Bitcoin.
Absolutely. I don't think Bitcoin will be much more stable in the coming, let's say, 3-5 years. It would be very surprising to me. But I think like down the road, like 15, 20 years, 25 years maybe, I think Bitcoin should, if it still exists, should be very stable. It's also possible that it doesn't exist anymore, but like as you said, the blockchain technology, or the fact that right now I think the only real application we have for blockchains right now is value transfer internationally. There's a few other things we are discovering.
I'm not seeing that anymore. I would have said that was true 6 months ago, but I've heard just within the last 2 weeks, people who are doing, as I say, copyright-like registrations or register this document. Like you used to be that if you wrote a novel that you would email yourself or you would mail yourself a physical copy of the novel so you could have a postmark on it. And people are doing that with blockchain now at a couple different sites. And I'll have to look them up because I don't remember them off the top of my head. So yeah, I think we're already starting to see some other interesting non-monetary applications of blockchain.
Yes, but the problem for blockchains, and that's what a lot of people don't really understand, is the incentive. There must be an incentive to mine this blockchain. As you know, blockchains are mined.
Because of the penalties, the mathematics,
Exactly, and if you don't have an incentive to mine this blockchain, and usually that's a monetary incentive, then the blockchain is not secure. And if you have a blockchain which is not secure, well, you don't need a blockchain at all. Because if you have a firewall, and this is part about Bitcoin, it doesn't need a firewall because everything is like double checked by everybody in the network.
Right.
And if you have a bank which just does the accounting or PayPal or whatever, then you don't need the blockchain because you have already the security by just having very, very good firewalls. But if you have an open system like the blockchain, like the Bitcoin blockchain, then you don't have these. You don't need these. Well, basically, the security comes from the expenditure of the mining power.
Right.
And in order for people to do that, because they don't want to lose money, they have to have another incentive, which is like they get rewarded with new tokens. So,
and I think we may have left some of our audience behind technically in the last 5 minutes there.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Jen, do you have any opinions on blockchain technology?
Well, I'm excited about this topic because I just bought a couple of Bitcoin through the Gemini exchange, and so I also saw the recent hack in Hong Kong, and so I started looking up. Oh, well, who's doing Bitcoin travel? So that's how we found you, Felix. But I'm still curious. I have a couple of questions. One, what do you think about the paper wallets? Like, what is the best way to store your Bitcoin? And then I also still want to get back to the question afterwards about the hardest countries to travel through.
Sure. I think paper wallets are, if you just want to invest into Bitcoin and then put it away, make sure you don't lose it, and then maybe you look at it in like 5-10 years, I think paper wallets are perfect because they are very secure, because like if you do it correctly, then a hacker cannot access your paper wallet coins because he needs physical access to the paper. So if you put it into a safe, you can put it in like a normal bank or anything like that. But be sure that there's
I thought you said Bitcoins were more safe than banks.
Yes, but if you put the
put the paper wallet in the bank.
Exactly. So you basically combine two security layers. Yeah, and just like the fact that it's offline, like the paper wallet, like getting access to this code on the paper is for a hacker impossible if he doesn't come into your house. But if your house gets like broken into, then obviously that's bad too. But you have to protect yourself against that too. But I think for the problem is like paper wallets are not there for daily spending. So if you want to spend from a paper wallet, you first have to like get it from the so-called cold storage. That's what we call paper wallets, because it's like not hot is like if it's on a computer that is connected to the internet, and cold is like if it's somewhere where it's not connected to the internet. So if it's not connected to the internet, obviously a hacker cannot get easily access to it.
So which exchange do you trust? Like which one are you storing yours in?
Well, that's the first thing. You should never store your Bitcoins in an exchange. You should use an exchange to buy your Bitcoins and then transfer them to somewhere where you control the so-called private key, because Bitcoin, the possession of Bitcoin is basically proven with cryptographic keys. It's more easy to use than it sounds. Basically what you have, for instance, an app on your phone. For Android, I can recommend Bitcoin Wallet, which is top entry orange logo in the App Store right now. For iPhone, I can recommend Red Wallet or Copay. And in these wallets basically hold your keys for yourself. And if nobody has access to your phone, it's impossible for these to get lost, for instance. If you store them in an exchange, you basically trust the exchange to have the security in place. But obviously, these exchanges are a much bigger target for hackers because they store so many coins at once. The idea of Bitcoin is to decentralize everything. So if everybody keeps a little bit his coins at home, metaphorically speaking, then it's much harder to have them all in one place. So it's not like such a big risk. It's also not a big target. It's much harder to access these. If you just want to, I would exactly say just get like €5 or $5 worth of Bitcoin, try it out first, and then once you understand it and you want to invest in it, then do that. But don't invest into something you don't understand. And you can use Bitcoin starting with $5. So just try it out. And try to send somebody or buy something online with a few bits. It's much easier, and it really shows you once you use it, you understand why it's useful. Because it's I think with a lot of things like in the world where you haven't used them and then you don't know why is it useful. And so
Felix, did you ever get stuck in a country during your travels where you couldn't find a Bitcoin solution and you had to rely on the kindness of strangers for something?
I have one of the problems I had was so back to my 3 rules. I cannot use a credit card because I didn't have a credit card. Exchange ATM. I cannot convert one country's money into another country's money. That's also forbidden. And basically I have to use Bitcoin somehow to get around, or get cash, but only via Bitcoin. So I have to meet these people. And in Miami, I had an appointment with one guy who wanted to trade Bitcoin with me, but he didn't show up. And I was stuck because I didn't have any more paper money in my pocket, and my flight was in 2 hours. So I had to somehow get to the airport quickly. But I had no money for the taxi or bus or anything like that. So I didn't know what to do. But then I came up with an idea, and because there's this app called Fold app, and what you can do is you can buy Starbucks gift cards at a discount with Bitcoin. And so I think you pay like $20 in Bitcoin, and you get like $25 worth of Starbucks gift card. And then what I did is I bought this gift card, and then I went into a coffee shop, and then I stand at the cashier, and I asked people who came in, and hey, can I buy your coffee for you with my gift card, and you give me cash. So that was the way I got a few dollars to pay for the bus ticket so I can get to the airport. That was one incident where I got a little stuck, but you have to get creative in these moments, I think, because not everything is in place yet for Bitcoin. I mean, it's very young. It's only like the technology exists for like 7 years, but like the first 3 years nobody was really using it. So we basically have like three and a half years. We have a couple 100,000 people maybe worldwide using it right now. It's hard to estimate, but like, yeah, the first 3 years nobody was using it.
I'm wondering if, a lot of people probably don't want to do exactly what you did, but there may be a use where people used to carry traveler's checks with them, like an emergency source of funds. The problem, of course, is that traveler's checks could still be stolen. Regular checks or currency, even if you try to hide something somewhere, if somebody takes all your bags. I'm wondering if travelers couldn't use Bitcoin as kind of like a traveler's check, maybe as an emergency store of currency. You keep it on your phone, or maybe you even keep it somewhere where you could download it if you were to go to a net cafe or something, or use someone else's computer, where you could access this and use it as an emergency store of cash.
That's probably in the future maybe one use case, once it's like more easy to like find actually a way to like cash out your Bitcoins for cash, because that's what you need in that moment if you can pay with Bitcoin. What you always can pay with Bitcoin is, for instance, a flight out of the country if you need it, for instance, so so you always can get home. But yeah, as you said, like the nice thing about Bitcoin, they are digital, so you can store them online somewhere and then access them from wherever you want. So one incident I had recently when I came back, I haven't used my PayPal account for so long, and basically I was locked out of my account because I was using it from a different country than I was using it before, and they locked me out, and then they sent me an SMS code. And but I lost my SIM card during this travel, so I couldn't access my PayPal funds. And this is like pretty much unheard of in Bitcoin, because if you have access to these cryptographic keys, then you can use your Bitcoins in whatever way you want. Like there's no lockout or something like that.
You mentioned that you could purchase flights and stuff on Expedia with Bitcoin?
You can buy hotels on Expedia, and you can buy flights on cheapair.com. And there's a couple other sites. I haven't used them, but I think there's BTC Trip or something like that. There's a couple of travel sites already.
So you're saying I can't purchase a flight on Expedia? I didn't realize that. I thought that when they took Bitcoin that they were taking it for everything.
Yeah, unfortunately, I thought so too. Unfortunately, they don't. They take it only for hotels. And not for flights.
I don't know.
I don't know why.
Do that. That doesn't make any sense. But
there's also a reason there's a lot of incentives for merchants actually. The incentive to accept Bitcoin is higher for merchants than it is for customers, and it is that if you have a let's say you flight aggregator like Expedia. And now you have these credit card processing fees, which are quite a lot of margin you usually make on top of the flight. So with Bitcoin, you can basically, because there are companies like BitPay and Coinbase who basically are like merchant payment processors for you. So you accept Bitcoin on your website, but you don't have to care about Bitcoin at all. It's just like another payment method with another logo. And at the end of the week, you get a wire transfer in your bank account by Coinbase, by BitPay, for the exact amount that you typed in. So if you ask the customer for $100, you get $100 in your bank account.
And the other thing is, because it's a short-term transaction, there's no real big risk for the fact that Bitcoin may be going up and down. So it is pretty no-brainer from a company. Why not take Bitcoin?
Yeah, BitPay and Coinbase completely take out the risk of the currency volatility for you.
Hey, Felix, are there any websites where you can earn money in Bitcoin? Or do exchanges for goods or services through Bitcoin, kind of like a Craigslist that's all Bitcoin?
Yes, I think you should maybe try bitalo.com. It's a website where you can like sell your old, computer or anything like that, and then
Bitalo?
Bitalo. Bitalo. I'm not sure if they are online right now. I think, but it's markets.bitalo.com. So you can put on whatever you want, and like for instance, if you have an old computer and you don't use it anymore, well, that's I think a nice idea to get your first Bitcoin by selling it. Obviously, the traffic on this website is still very low. Like so, you might have not. If you want it tomorrow, then it will probably sell right away. But yeah, I think the whole economy is just starting, so it's.
There's also places probably on the dark web, Jen. If you're looking to buy, say 1,000 credit card numbers, you could probably pay for that in Bitcoin.
Exactly.
Now, is a nice girl like me gonna get into any trouble for just even perusing the dark web?
Maybe. Who knows?
Only one way to find out, Jen.
Exactly.
I wouldn't click on anything. Let's just say that.
Well, I do have a couple of Bitcoin now, so they're burning a hole in my pocket.
All right, well, why don't we...
Oh, sorry, Gary. Is there anything else that you wanted to tell us about your trip at all? Like countries to avoid if someone's going to copy and try to travel through Bitcoin, are there any countries or regions to avoid, money-wise?
Well, places where the internet doesn't reach or that are not as technologically sophisticated aren't going to be good for Bitcoin.
Good point, Chris. That's
so Cuba is
a good
example.
What was
in Cuba.
Oh, sure.
Basically, only less than 10% of the private households have an actual internet connection because for a long time it was not allowed, and the internet connection to the island itself was very limited.
But you're going to have problems with your credit card there right now, too, until they finish reconnecting the financial system. So, you're just going to be in a cash society.
Yes. And I was actually possible, I don't know how, but I found an ad by a guy on Cuba who wanted to buy Bitcoin. And obviously, he can't find any Bitcoin. He can also leave the country easily, right? So the only way for him to get Bitcoin, basically, because I was visiting him once I found out that he actually was for real, and I thought in the beginning it was a joke, because why would somebody in Cuba need Bitcoin? But actually, he wanted to buy some Bitcoin, and I contacted him, and then I flew over, and he picked me up at the airport. We traded, and that's how I was able to get around in Cuba. But I didn't find any businesses accepting Bitcoin because, again, like the internet connection is very, very underdeveloped.
So basically, we need Airbnb to accept Bitcoin.
That would be great. The problem with Airbnb and all these companies that have like these liabilities, if you, for instance, do something bad in the house, they at least have your credit card and can charge you like for that later. Like they have you on the credit card. With Bitcoin, nobody can take your money. There's no like pull system in Bitcoin. Nobody can charge your credit card or your Bitcoin account. The only way for somebody to get Bitcoin is because you actually sent him Bitcoin. It's like a push.
Right. So that would be a problem with rental cars, also, for instance, for this.
Exactly. There are a few ideas how you could emulate something like that in Bitcoin, but again, like everything has to be cryptographically proven because this is like the biggest honeypot for hackers in the world if it's not secure. design, then people will lose money.
Well, in many ways, and the odd thing with Bitcoin is, in that sense, it is similar to a cash economy. It's more like a high-tech, safer cash economy, which means that it has some of the same limitations. You're going to run into the same problem getting hotel rooms and rental cars and things like that with cash, where you may have to put down a deposit or something like that.
Exactly.
The Bitalo that you talked about, BITALO, they have a travel section where it says share your apartment for Bitcoins.
Yes, that's also something they want to offer now. They recently started.
Well, Jen, when you're out doing your Lyft driving or your Uber driving, you can now accept Bitcoin. And
yeah, we won't be accepting Bitcoin for the Airbnb at our place anytime soon.
At Shea Christensen.
So, well, for one thing, we're booked actually for the next year. So.
Are you really, Chris?
Yeah, we've.
How are you booked through for the whole year?
We have an exchange student coming back with us who will be with us for a couple of years, going to the local community college, taking one of the rooms, and then we actually have a professor and his son will be teaching in another college who wanted his son to go to one of the better junior highs in the area, which happens to be where our neighborhood is, one of the best in the nation. So he's actually staying with us for a year also. So.
Oh, congratulations! That makes it really nice that you don't have a bunch of strangers in and out all the time. It's just
no, we just don't. We don't do that. We have had long-term guests. We've got a father and son right now from Shanghai who are. The son is attending a class to improve his English, an English immersion program for the summer. So that's the kind of people we have. Interesting people. So.
Great.
Maybe one last thing I want to say.
Oh, sure.
One last thing I want to say about Bitcoin is sometimes I actually. Discovered that in some countries there's a very, very high demand for Bitcoin and a very low supply, which that implies obviously is that the price is higher of Bitcoin in these countries. So when I was in Brazil, it was actually like if you take the market rate of the Brazilian reais and United States dollar, and then you take the Bitcoin price and compare these, basically you have two different conversion rates. So basically what it allows you to do is like if you find somebody in Brazil who wants to trade with you, he will obviously take the price from a Brazilian exchange because otherwise he would have to purchase it there. And basically what you can get is like you can get about 12% more for your money, more cash basically for your dollars. So if you could like if you go visit the Brazilian Olympic Games right now, you could set up like a Coinbase account and buy the Bitcoin at the same day, and then sell these Bitcoins in Brazil for cash, and basically have a better exchange rate, much better exchange rate than if you would take a $100 bill and exchange that at some exchange place.
Sell your Bitcoins for cash to make money.
No, I mean it's not that easy. You have to find the places. It's also probably just temporarily in some countries, but it's always maybe good to look out if you go to another country, check the local exchange rate and see if maybe it makes more sense to take Bitcoin with you instead of taking cash with you.
Exciting.
All right, well, let's move on now to our picks of the week. Chris, you got anything for us?
Sure, I'm going to do an odd one. I'm going to go the exact opposite direction of Bitcoin. I don't know if you remember, but I used to work for a startup called PayNearMe.com, and they actually deal with people who don't have a bank account, can't have a bank account, just had to give up their credit cards or whatever. So no checking, no savings, no credit cards at all. And they enable you to purchase some travel things, like you can get a Greyhound ticket with cash. And you can also buy things from Amazon and things like that, basically with cash, where you basically go on with your smartphone or your computer. And 10% of the households in the U.S. have people who are adults who are underbanked, who don't have those accounts. And you can go to Greyhound, for instance, and one of your options for paying is Pay Near Me, where you basically get a receipt, go into a nearby 7-Eleven or some other store, pay with cash, and then can use that to travel. So it's another way of turning, in this case, an older currency technology into an online currency. PayNearMe.com.
Well, Chris, I will go one step further than you, and I will recommend animal skins and seashells.
There you go. There you go.
You can look for places
but I find the animal skin market is just way too volatile. We lost all our money when we put it into zebra skins.
That's because you want beaver pelts.
Oh,
they're going to be huge again. They're coming up. They're coming back. I spent 3 weeks in Alaska, and what I'm going to recommend is that there's a pretty set track that a lot of people do when they go to Alaska. They take a cruise, they do the Inside Passage, Glacier Bay, they stop in Juneau, Anchorage, maybe they get on a train to Denali, and that's what they see of Alaska. So I want to recommend, and all those places are great. Juneau's great, Denali is great, but there's a lot of cool stuff in Alaska that you really have to go to your way to see because there are no roads, and you basically have to take a float plane to get there. So I want to recommend the 4 national parks you can't drive to. That would be Gates of the Arctic National Park, which is up in above the Arctic Circle. Kobuk Valley National Park, which is the least visited national park in the U.S. People there told me they get about 200 to 400 visitors a year, and they have absolutely no idea because there's no registration or anything. Lake Clark National Park, where we were very, very close to bears, and Katmai National Park, which is, again, probably one of the best bear viewing areas in the world, where you can see grizzly bears feeding at a waterfall as the salmon go upstream. So these parts of Alaska that a lot of people don't visit, that take a little bit more work to get to, highly, highly recommend.
Now, Gary, can you drive to Glacier Bay? I thought that was a 5th national park you cannot drive to in Alaska.
Yeah, but it's easy to get there with a boat. I mean,
sure.
it's...
Okay. But, if you skip the Inside Passage, you won't get to do the shopping in Sitka.
Yes, you won't be able to buy artwork and jewelry
Tanzanite. Tanzanite. It's all about the Tanzanite.
I was in Juneau, and one of my readers contacted me, and he wanted to meet up. So I went to this place called Tracy's Crab Shack in Juneau, which is actually really good.
Very well-known place.
We arrived there at about, 7 p.m., and it was packed. I mean, it was packed full of people. And we sat down, and by the time our food came out, like at 7:30, it was empty.
Because all the cruise ship people had gone back.
Yep. They all have to get to their ships. And they had never been there before because it's a place that a lot of the tourists go to. But it's amazing how much the city changes after a certain point at night when everyone has to get back on their ships.
Well, and that's about halfway between the part of the town that stays open all year round and the part of the town that completely closes down in the winter, where you can buy your Tanzanite and your T-shirts.
Yeah, and I should also add, I took a hike with some of the people from Tourism Juneau who had also never done this trip. We hiked to the Mendenhall Glacier.
Oh, wow.
It's easy to see the Mendenhall Glacier, but we actually went there and went into one of the caves. It's an ice cave. And I took some really great shots from inside the cave. And it's technically open to the public. We had other people just kind of wandering in. We had helmets and stuff, but most people were just kind of walking in on their own. And really an interesting experience to consider doing. You have to check on local conditions because it's ice and it's moving and it's melting and it's a glacier. But definitely worthwhile if you're a little bit more adventurous. Jen, what do you got for us?
Gary, first of all, I just want to say that was my favorite tip that you've given in such a long time. That was a really good one.
Of course, we haven't done a show in such a long time, so that's really...
Okay, usually I like to tie in my tips to the guest, but this time, since the Olympics are starting, I wanted to let you know that LonelyPlanet.com is offering a free Celebrate Rio guide to the host city. So you can go to LonelyPlanet.com/Brazil/Rio de Janeiro, and you can find their free guide, which you can download, or you can just check out a lot of the information online at that address. And they also have another section if you're not going to Rio for the Olympics but you want to follow along. Check out lonelyplanet.com/news/Rio-Olympics. And then they've got all sorts of Lonely Planet travel news regarding Brazil, Rio, and the Olympics.
Just as an aside, if anyone happens to be watching this today, August 5th, or listening to it, I'm going to be doing a live.
Dick Jordan is watching us live, so there's at least one.
Okay, I'm doing a live video stream tonight during the opening ceremony of the Olympics, where I'm going to be talking about all the countries you don't know about that have the one person holding a flag. So I'm going to be giving thoughts and observations and a little bit of background on Micronesia, and I'm sure they're one weightlifter, or the person doing sailboarding from the Cook Islands or wherever.
Gary,
I've been to a lot of these places.
Where can people follow along for this?
On Facebook. I'll be doing it on Facebook and then sharing it on my Facebook page, facebook.com/everythingeverywhere. So I'll be doing that tonight. So there you go.
Gary, I haven't been to as many countries as you, but now that I've been to Russia and China, my map is going to look much better than yours. And I have now been to more countries than I have years of age, which is a big milestone.
Well done, Chris. Congratulations.
Congratulations. It's funny that you mentioned Micronesia, because I also was in Micronesia on Yap Island, which is a very interesting island also because they use a very special kind of, or at least they used for very many centuries, a very special kind of money. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I encourage everybody who is curious now to go to Google and type in Yap Island and then money. And then you can see
it's not coconuts then, is what you're saying.
It's not. But it's a very interesting form of money, and it has, even this is very, very analog, it has some similarities with Bitcoin too, which I discovered when I went there.
Yeah. Okay.
Stone money.
Yeah, I do remember hearing that.
I have two tips for people who are not really traveling, but more like digital nomads, like people who want to work remotely and live in other countries for quite some time.
Great.
And one is I use a lot is numbeo.com. It's like a website where they list cost of living, NUMBEO. You can compare cities to another, and you can easily check out like what is quality of life, healthcare situation, pollution, and all these kind of other, like they had it's like contributed like Wikipedia, but it's like Wikipedia for numbers in cities, so prices of houses, food, and everything. It's a very, very neat resource to compare. And the second one is Nomad List, nomadlist.com, where you can basically type in a couple of requirements you have for the city of your dreams, which you don't know which one it is. Like, what do you want? Like cheap flights or fast internet? Should be family friendly and all this kind of stuff. How's the nightlife? And you type in a few variables, and they will give you like a top 10 list, like rank them in what order should you like visit them and like get an idea. If you don't know where to go, that's a very nice website.
All right, then. Let's wrap things up. Chris, what is new in the Amateur Traveler this week?
The last episode we did was one with Lawrence Nora talking about the Dordogne region of France.
Excellent. Jen, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at the LA Times travel section, reviewing travel websites and travel apps on yournorthcounty.com, and in person. Chris, I'm coming up for the anniversary of Book Passage Travel Writers.
Yeah, I saw you were going to be in the Bay Area because Blogger Bridge told me. But
oh, well, that's okay. You're going to have to tell me how that works. I'm only coming up for the Saturday night event, but are you going to go up for that?
I might. I haven't figured it out.
Okay. Well, if any of our listeners are going to the alumni evening event Saturday night, I will be there and supporting Don and Tim and Book Passage and everybody on their big 25th anniversary.
Excellent. Felix, where can people find you online?
I basically am on most platforms, social network, social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, GitHub, all under the username Felix Weis.
Excellent. And as usual, you can find me at everything-everywhere.com. And until next time, get outside and make sure to get some Bitcoins.
Not too much. Just try it out.